The tank noses to a halt where the farm lane breaks off, steel snout hanging over a black seam in the earth. The culvert is gone, washed out and blown out, both, rainwater and charges agreeing on a single answer. Drizzle ticks on the hull, like a clock you can hear but can't stop. The blackout hood over the headlamp squeezes the beam into a bruised slit on mud, too dim to read depth, bright enough to lie. Exhaust curls into the cut and sits there, a low gray pool. It isn't a puddle. It's a mouth, 12 feet across and undercut, edges scalloped, so what looks firm isn't. Ahead, the lane bends and falls toward a crossroads they were told to reach before dusk. Dusk is already on their faces. If they idle here, mortar crews will start guessing their grid. If they move, there has to be a road where there isn't one. Sergeant Rains drops from the hull before the commander clears the hatch, boots squelching in clay. He slips a rifle sling to its last hole, leans over emptiness, and pays out telephone wire from his radio man's pack, forearm counting spans. The wire goes loose in the dark. He brings it back wet and biting and measures again from a new angle. 10 feet if the lips were clean, 12 because they're not, 15 if the banks keep slewing under their own weight. He plants a boot, hears the edge peel with a soft, treacherous sigh, and watches the gap widen by an inch they won't get back. Behind him, the platoon fans in a shallow arc across the lane, kneeling without cover because there isn't any. One man steps on a tuft, and the tuft slides. Everything that looks solid has been undercut and hollowed by water and the last blast. Lieutenant DeLuca swings down from the turret, headset crooked on his neck, two voices in his ear, the driver's breath through the throat mic, HQ crackling a thin answer. He hates bringing his Sherman where the ground can't be seen. He's had ground take tanks. Orders say, keep pressure. The rhythm of this country says a ridge every mile, a town on every ridge, and the enemy buying time one culvert at a time. He looks down the lane and spots a barricade of carts and stone 200 yards forward, a puzzle that needs a shell if only he can get a gun to it. The radio fizzles about bridging and then doesn't. A dry voice finally arrives. Assets rerouted south. Hours. Hours makes this place either a campsite or the start of a fight they can't choose to leave. Rains tests the approach without meaning to. 2 steps backward and the lane makes a sucking gulp. The driver would bury it to the axles. Treads would make the clay slicker with each bite. Rains lifts his wire like a ruler and points at the undercut, at the tea-brown trickle running along slick shale exposed by the culvert's bones. Undercuts make promises, he says to nobody. He sees the problem in lines he doesn't name: load path, flex, sag. A deck will punch through if it's only deck. Beams need to carry more than they should. The center will give unless made to resist. He has bridged training field creeks in a dry place a long time ago. This isn't that. He is counting the best lies available. The drizzle pulls a ridge out of the fog and erases it again. A smear of chestnut trees, a town, a church tower sheared. Wind comes down from that height and lays a ripple on the ditch's skin. Someone coughs. The driver drums 2 fingers on his levers like a man remembering a song. DeLuca swears softly at concrete that isn't here and at the map that says, keep moving. He grew up believing tanks were answers. You drive fields, you push walls, you don't build. But the equation in front of him refuses driving. He glances at the barricade again. He can argue with carts and stone, but not if he loses his machine here. The SCR 300 has its own weather, bad tonight. The pack hunched on its operator's spine hisses with wet static. Rains leans into the handset until the clipped voice surfaces from miles away. No bridge, assets south of you, your discretion. Your discretion is permission and a trap. Rains checks his watch. It's late enough for the sky to lie and light enough to get seen. Wait, and darkness will make the bank slime and the ditch deeper, and a mortar crew will get curious about any engine that purrs in one place. Move, and they need a span today. He turns and sees the farmhouse shouldered up to the lane, plaster peeling, eave tiles missing in a toothy run where the day has already been costly. A woman stands with a blanket as a coat. The front door is thick old plank. He sees it as a span. He sees two. He sees the hallway as a store of beams. The barn next to it gapes. Its uprights good wood if they come free. Between here and the crossroads, there isn't a lumber yard, but there are homes that stand on their own boards. He tastes the choice. "We're going shopping," he says, and the men look at him the way they always do when he makes theft sound like work. Requisition isn't ruin, they tell themselves. They know the difference and what they have to do anyway. Pivet Miro is 19 and has the Italian, so they send him to knock rather than pry. He has a face mothers don't hate, even wet and shaking. Raines thinks briefly about lying. "You'll get the door back, we'll fix it," and instead tucks a cigar tin in Miro's hand and rations in the other. Cigarettes and hash, the only currency that still spends. Signora Bellini meets them with her chin set. A crucifix swings when she moves. The cellar behind is a low stone mouth with people in it. When Miro fumbles words for bridge and road and help, she hears door and bed. She knows what weight does to wood and how long it takes to replace a thing that fits a hinge. She tells him no with sorrow that expects to be overruled by men in war. Raines takes his hat off in the rain and talks through Miro in a flat, quick cadence, hammer strokes. He points to the gap, the tank, the bend in the lane where the enemy is already moving in his head. He holds up the tin and cans like offering. "We bring back or make new," he says, and believes it enough to say, because belief is needed more than truth. He keeps his voice beneath theft. She half nods, then touches the door with her knuckles, as if saying goodbye. Two men step to the hinges, and she says, "Wait." She gives them a screwdriver from a drawer, like a priest handing a book to a pallbearer. The door comes off with a sigh. The hallway gives up doors in a procession, tired paint, iron mouths wrinkled, panels swollen by years and tonight. 4 doors become 4 shields, held across chests as men shuffle through drizzle toward the ditch, a safe corridor turning dangerous outside. Upstairs, the bed frame is iron and oak with bolts that refuse. The axe persuades. The barn yields loft supports, rough chestnut with worm trails that don't matter if the heart is true. Everything straight is precious. They take long pieces, and what won't drop the roof if it goes, a lie told to her and to themselves. On the road, Raines sets beams across the mouth of the cut like ribs and lays the doors over them as deck, side by side, hinges out. "Doors are not structure, beams are structure," he says until the hands make that true. He hauls telephone wire under and over, lashing the pieces into one stubborn thought. The wire bites wood and skin, rain easing knots tight. Blanket strips come next, torn from Signora Bellini's spare bedding by permission asked with eyes, not words, stretched into a net that looks like a fisherman's lie, but holds parts where they must sit. He watches the undercut, forces the outer beams to reach farther than the inner, buying inches. He wants a center support and doesn't have it yet. The undercut laughs. He leans on one beam, and the bank peels a cake-sized piece into the gap. The ditch widens as he measures it. 10 feet becomes 11 by the minute. The water ticks up a half-inch with a kettle pour. The pocket where a midspan post might live is a wet emptiness. He holds a bed rail, straight and stubborn, and sees that doubled with another, it makes something stiffer than either alone if the lashings hold. "We double them," he says. He pushes 2 rails together, bracket to bracket, and binds until the wire sings. DeLuca brings the Sherman to the lip. The approach collapses under the weight, like bread under a knife. Chevron treads stamped shingles into the clay. Each shingle compresses into slicker mud. The driver eases back, careful. The lane in front of the deck is now a smear that won't help the first feet of climb. Rains sends men to cut brush. They layer branches and hay pitched from the barn floor to build a scratchy mat so the cleats bite something that isn't grease. Traction can be invented from friction if you refuse to admit you're standing in soup. Drizzle turns the hay into dark felt. The radio hisses with somebody else's news. A thin voice leaks, an anti-tank gun moving toward a crossroads like theirs, a quarter-mile east. It wrecks their time. An enemy piece set on the next straight means the tank must get to where it can move faster than a man runs, or it will be a catalog picture. The phrase "lock the lane" arrives, and the lane here is the only one. Rains does math. How long to finish? How long to cross if nothing lies? How long for a crew to nose a gun around, lay, and shoot? He stops at too long. A flare opens like a cold flower beyond the bend, not over them, but close enough to draw edges. It hangs and washes the world flat, every shallow print inked, every lash, shadow a black line. Instinct freezes every man for a breath, then work resumes because frozen men invite corrections from far away. The first mortar thump is suggestion, the second is an answer. Impacts walk the road behind, not yet on the ditch, but not yet is a fool's comfort. Rains moves because light won't choose for him. He jerks lashings tighter, doubles the doubled rails where the approach is worst, and stamps his heel on the deck to hear how the wood speaks. It groans. It doesn't crack. Not the same as safe. He slices 2 fingers in the air to DeLuca. Wait. Then points at the deck, then the driver, palm open. Low gear, steady throttle. No brake, no stop. He leaves unsaid what they all know. Stop, and the tank becomes a door ornament until dawn. Tools are a joke that doesn't land. No jack to seat beams, no sledge to make earth obey. The pry bar from the Sherman's kit is the only lever. Rains steals weight from the tank to set bearings, puts men on outer beams, and has them rock into clay while the driver inches up. Thumbs almost go. Splinters get under nails to be found later. Senora strips her own blanket, long tier and all, because watching men ruin cloth with bad knives takes longer than doing it herself. The first plank lies crooked because the bank wants crooked, made of everything. Telephone wire sings high when it takes load. Rains leans on the far timber and feels it answer. He knows the load path in his palms now, a dog that will run if not leashed. He moves one door 2 inches so its stiles sit over wood, not air. A training sergeant's voice, studs, not skin, clicks up from memory. Hinges are lines of failure. Point them toward the gap, not the tank, to keep a hard edge from becoming a fulcrum under steel. Out in the fields, flares die, and night snaps back like a lid. Wind comes up. The drizzle turns toward rain. DeLuca looks at the deck like a man memorizing a face. He will drive 30 tons onto furniture and rope if they do this. He raises a brow that is a question and a charge. Rains hears both and answers without being asked. We build now, or we fight here in the open. Open ground is already tugging them. A mortar team drops another round somewhere beyond the hedgerow, testing range with lazy, patient thumps. The men glance up like they can hear a shell carving air, though none has found them yet. The drizzle hisses on canvas and helmets and steel. Rains accepts the sound as a clock you feel. He doesn't let doubt grow. He sends 2 to brush cut, sends Miro to the near bank to hold a lash tail out of the mud, sends a corporal to fetch nails and a hinge plate to use as a clamp. They all move half-crouched, rifles high to keep them dry, and rule their hands. The Sherman idles behind, muffled under its hood, hot breath pale on the ground, smelling of fuel and damp exhaust. The farmhouse breathes roses stained to tea color and old timber. Bellini watches from the hall as her home goes skeletal. Miro translates the trade like a solemn ritual. She touches a door's grain to remember it. Hinges squeal out with hand-warmed screws. Each door, once unseated, weighs like a life carried. By the time 4 panels stack outside, the barn has surrendered longer bones and the bed frame rails with iron brackets and heel marks. A rusted axe appears. A boy holds the coil of phone wire like a sleeping snake. War gives tools second lives they never asked for. Back at the ditch they measure again, Miro shaking under wire while Raines pays it across. 10 feet is 11 now, thanks to the peel. He plants a boot too close and drops to a knee in cold clay to the thigh. 2 hands jerk him back and the bank caves further, widening the enemy they must cross by another small insult. The plan in his head pivots. 2 beams across won't make it. Double them at the track lines, offset the joints so one can take over when the other fails. A single straight is a liar. 2 bound into one word might tell the truth. He ties the pairs like a sailor binding a snapped mast, cross-lashing in wet, learning by the bite that one wrap will cut into soft wood unless he spreads it with cloth. Blanket bands lay under the wire. Bed frame brackets bite like teeth when hammered on with the axe's pole, keeping the pair from rolling apart into 2 separate sorrows. The doors remain deck, not pillars. Someone will try to use a panel as a beam because solid looks strong. Raines says it twice anyway. You ask studs to carry weight. You ask skin to tell it where to go. There's a center trough between the doubled lines, a black lane where brown water chatters against the undercut. If a guide horn wanders, it will catch and climb into that emptiness and skip off the sprocket. That mistake ruins minutes and lives. He orders a wedge. It exists only after they cut a door stile to angle and pair it with a bed rail. It will sit where steel might stray and knock it back onto true. The tank idles closer, its nose coming into everyone's lower sight like a sunrise they didn't want. The lamp's hood throws a ghost. Wet chevrons shine. The right track cleats look small enough to press through paint if the paint has lies under it. Behind the hedgerow, another flare climbs slow as a confession, then pops and pours white that makes the deck a stage. Work continues, because stopping invites neat math from across the field. They've been registered on the lane, not the ditch. 3 splashes prove it, 10 yards off, then 8, then 5. Splinters stitch door paint. Someone's breath hitches above the steel and rain. Raines tucks himself behind a bank that would betray him if it could and feels the hand on their shoulder. Ours, no bridge. Keep pressure. He's had the answer. He waves the Sherman snug and flat, then stops it with an open palm. The first try has to be the only try. He squats at the near bearing, palms flat, feeling the wood speak. Lashings creak. The doubled beams groan a bass note. He sees where 3 door hinge lines happen to meet and form a seam across the width, a ready-made crack. Ugly truth asks for an ugly fix. Slide 1 panel an inch, then 2. Break the alignment so no joint shares a joint. He does it. It looks wrong and will save them. DeLuca leans into the tank's voice tube, calm enough to fool the crew. First gear, clutch like an egg, no brake on wood, do not stop. The driver nods because he cannot afford a shake. Loader and gunner brace boots like a habit. The Sherman noses until a road wheel wrinkles door paint. Everything makes a new sound, a low moan like something exhaling. The deck sags and then rises as the beam pairs take the first bite. Wire goes tight enough to glitter. Rain beads pluck off and vanish. Raines makes the small circle with one finger. Go on. Mud shears from the first idler. Cleats bite brush and hay, then smear into paint. For a second, the tank exists in 2 futures. The wedge earns its keep. A guide horn drifts toward the deck edge. The angled plank takes the kiss and turns it back, a soft, bad sound, no louder than a hand on a door. 1 inch of wood keeps 30 tons from chewing furniture into a ditch. The machine is on the span. The span bows like a living thing. Mortar coughs closer, still behind them. Splinters patter the deck, speckle the glacis with small bright wounds. Rains flinches, but doesn't duck. He stays where he reads weight by feel, counting seconds the midspan can live under bend before fibers begin to separate with a feathery noise that will not stop when asked. He wants to put a shoulder under physics and knows the joke in that. Down in the cellar, Signora Bellini whispers at a speed that would shame a machine gun. She doesn't know if she's praying for her doors or the boys tracking mud into her life. Miro hears her rush and swallows acid. He repeats the AT rumor again at Raines's elbow, a reminder that the world beyond the ditch has a barrel in it. Raines points the center. Two men slide under like mechanics under a bull, elbows in silt, bed rails in their hands. They jam braces around a crib of stones shoved under the span's heart. No real pier, only a stack pressed into muck and held by faith and a tank's push, but the middle needs to be more than hope. The rails get driven home with the pry bar, a thin, brave ring swallowed by engine noise. The Sherman's nose comes over the center. The deck bows deeper. Doors give up bluffs that sound like cracks and are not. DeLuca stares through wet reflection at the far bank as if willing it closer. He keeps the hum steady. The driver's hands don't twitch. The heaviest second is the one where you want to relieve pressure and can't. Another flare. Closer. The world bleaches. Shadows knife under the hull. Someone drops a marker round into the hedgerow and throws a shovel of black dirt onto the deck. The next will be nearer. DeLuca doesn't look up. Raines doesn't. Eyes are for ground with no mercy. The sky is a thief. He cuts chatter with a hand across the throat, taps two fingers to his eyes, then the deck, then leans in so his breath fogs the driver's little world. One pass. No stops. Can you do it? DeLuca answers without speaking. A gloved palm pushes forward an inch, a promise of low, steady, straight. Raines knocks twice on the glacis. Go means go when he says it. He turns into the rain toward the span they made from doors and stubbornness. Ditch banks slump again. Clay slides in slow sheets, and the throw is now 12.5, wider in the belly. Raines retools his plan mid-kneel. He'd imagined spans passing load into banks like a shrug. The earth is soft where it should be hard, hollow behind faces that pretend to solidity. He offsets joints in the doubled beams so no break has a twin, binds until wire sings, and hammers bed brackets onto lock pairs from rolling. He wants midspan to be a plural verb. Rain thickens. The approach slicks. They throw more brush and hay into the bite because traction is math, and the grade will shear under first cleats if left naked. Miro slips, goes to a knee, gets hauled up by the elbow, and set on door edges to hold, while a nail gets driven through iron plate into swollen panel. Nails hold promises and lies equally for long enough. The radio's woolly mutter repeats the only truth. Pressure up, no bridge, don't let them set on the ridge by dawn. Then, possible 7.5 centimeters near the crossroads. Maybe rumor, maybe not. Raines doesn't take a vote. He flattens his hand in a hard wave. Time is now. He feels hinge lines under his fingers, and it bothers him how neat they are. He orders one shifted. Miro and another man heel a panel sideways to scatter neatness because neat lines break neat. Raines wedges a notched rail under a deck edge where a guide horn will likely misbehave. It looks foolish. It will pick up a mistake and feed it back to true. DeLuca's voice drops inside the steel. Keep it like it is. No break on wood, no lift until you smell ground. The first wheel rolls onto paint. The deck exhales again. Lashings stretch. Blanket bands carry bite. The doubled beams take weight like brothers learning each other's stories. Raines makes a circle with a finger. The driver's throttle hum stays the same. He refuses the urge to help physics with his right foot. Mud slides under the near side bogey. The cleats chew hay, then smear paint in neat V's. The wedge nudges a wandering horn back to center with a knock that sounds private. A bad drift becomes a steady line, and lives turn back toward the hill. Mortars walk. Impacts move forward, 8 yards, 5, then the crown of the lane spits mud on their helmets. Splinters hum by, nicking the tank's side. Inside, the loader mouths something the driver can't hear. The gunner holds his breath like a held comma. The tank's center mass creeps over a span raised for exactly this one lie. The deck's spine decides. It bows. The sound when wood goes plastic is not romantic. It's an old door closing far away. The bedrail braces push back, stones under them crackle, settle, find new neighbors in silt. The far landing, wet as soap, recedes an inch as the bank slumps away. Their throw grows in the middle of crossing. What was 10 is suddenly 13 with a bad attitude. Rains tastes the old line he learned from a man who died in another year. Not strong forever, strong enough now. He buys an inch with that sentence. The left inner guide horn kisses the wedge again and is forgiven. It doesn't climb. The track doesn't walk off. Absurdity proves structural when leaned on by 30 tons. Miro's voice comes small and urgent from the far lip. Slippery, up. The exit is turning to glass. If they climb wrong, they'll stall where the worst bend waits. Rains flattens his palm, then flips it. Bias the right. Feed it brush. DeLuca murmurs into steel. The driver eases the right stick forward, the left only enough to obey. The doors complain. The beam pairs groan under a new, uglier asymmetry. If one member fails now, the other will be asked to carry both, and will for a breath. Then it won't. Nobody says it out loud. A voice on the net, saw-toothed by rain. Movement at the crossroads, possible piece setting, hurry. Not even a complete sentence. It's still a shove. Rains answers the air by not changing anything except his jaw. The nose is nearly on the far bank. The brush mat they pitched under the landing catches first cleats and then squirts under them. The tank pauses, not because the driver wants it, but because the earth considers the request. The deck bows another inch. Somewhere inside a bedrail, there's a long, toothy sigh. Rains stabs 2 fingers and a point. Under and ahead. Now. A man bolts right with a hay bale that was a bed. He throws it under steel with something like faith. Another tears a blanket and spills straw into the bite. Cleats grab a fraction. It isn't traction. It's less than nothing, but less than nothing keeps shame off their backs. A flare lifts again and drizzles needles of white. The mortar ladder closes. One burst clips the deck's corner, spraying pulped paint and wet wood across the tank's lower plate. 2 men under the span push up like Atlas and do nothing and everything. Their hands say, "Stay," and the deck obeys until the tank's weight says otherwise. They should have left. They don't. DeLuca watches Rains and sees a man who will spend himself to make the world hold. Rains watches DeLuca and sees a man who will risk his machine to keep a radio promise about ridgelines and morning. He raises his hand for what he hopes is the last time. Down. The driver feeds another inch. The right cleats eat straw, and then clay, and finally bite. The Sherman tilts into a mean angle. The left track groans high on the edge of walking. The world tightens to the space at a steel guide horn. The guide horn on the left pops free. The sound is almost too small for its threat, a dry bone snap under rain. It hangs half on, half off, 1 inch of wrong ready to become all the wrong. In the thin hush between engine hum and the next airburst, Rains boots the wedge until it bites against the doubled beam, and the horn kisses back onto center with a dull, fragile thunk. He drops to his belly in the wet and stares under, looking for chevrons climbing out into nothing. Bed linen rope smokes under tension where phone wire is wound 3 times over a rail. 30 tons is not a number, it's a tide lifting furniture. The undercut bank breathes like a ribcage about to give. He doesn't share that. DeLuca keeps his voice level for the machine. Keep it, no break until you smell wood cooking. The driver's fingers bleach under grime where they hold the sticks. Low in a Sherman has no mercy if the deck coughs out from under you. Steady means stretching the moment exactly as long as the wood can keep its lie. The blackout hood makes two blunt crescents of light smear along wet paint. Miro crouches at the near lip with wire in his hands and no end to his prayer. Rain cuts his breath into ribbons. He cannot tell if the tank is nearer or if the enemy is. An 81 launches with its hollow hiccup and walks 2 splashes left of the road. Another flare unspools cold above, glazing every nailhead with a little star, beam shadows strobing so the deck seems to breathe. They are still on the lane. One phone call moves them to the ditch. Rains calculate silently. 3, maybe 4 brackets before the line is exact. He decides there will be no pause to adjust once a bogey clears. In the cellar, Bellini is a dark comma at the far wall, listening to drumming on her ceiling that used to be doors and is now a bridge. She names her wood like animals, Trav, ass, as if to bless it. She tastes ash and sweetness on the cigarette she took under duress. She closes her eyes when white light washes through cracks because it makes the world flat and merciless. The far mat bears. The first chevrons find scratch and don't spin. That small change of load, earth receiving, keeps a bounce from rippling through the deck. Dynamic is the killer. The driver holds the hum as if it were a string. Miro feels force slip under his toes like a slide and vanish. Rains glances down the crooked hinge line. He's staggered and bets on ugly. The driver feels bogeys roll over thresholds he can't see. 1, 2, 3, each a footfall on someone's parlor. His foot wants to tap a brake to correct the tank's yaw. DeLuca's voice is a metronome. Don't touch, don't dab, count it out. Imagine a Bailey Bay, only you built this out of beds and grief. The driver licks rain from his lip and tastes iron and flare dust. He keeps his eyes on a thin strip of mud past the hood that means straight. If he looks at men, he'll try to spare them and lose the bridge. The handset crackles under a poncho, the net hissing worse in weather. Words glue together. Gun, crossroads, reset, pressure. Nobody needs the rest. It says the lane they are buying will be gone if they don't spend it in the next minutes. Rains doesn't look up from his fingers. He waves the driver on with a tiny circle and swallows the need to hurry with his mouth. A mortar lands close. Slivers of door kiss the glacis and skip off. A whip of phone wire snaps free and lifts. The deck drops a finger and comes back as the load shifts to adjacent lashings. That bounce is the one he warned against. The driver keeps RPM iron steady and refuses to hop. A man grabs the free wire with a bare palm and hauls it down. His skin blisters immediately. He won't hold a spoon tomorrow. He doesn't wonder why his hand hurts until morning. The first bogeys clear onto brush and clay beyond the far lip. Weight starts flowing off the deck. The register of every groan drops. Time stretches instead of compressing. DeLuca doesn't change a thing. The last betrayal of a bridge is to celebrate early and break. The driver does the hardest work, nothing, until steel is on dirt. The trailing road wheel rolls. The deck gives one more honest groan. A panel under it bursts in a puff of white chips and wet dust. The tread stamps a chevron signature into a door that remembers being inside a room. The horn stays low. The wedge skitters into a puddle and floats there like something dead that saved a life. The far beam's last inch holds through nothing but friction and stubborn clay. Then it's done. The hull is on bank. Stillness after motion is the only proof that matters. DeLuca taps his throat mic and says it's small. Moving. The infantry ahead of the bend hear it and start to breathe. He pops the hatch a finger to drink air that tastes of rot, wine, old paint, and the bitter metal of expectation. He slaps it shut. He taps the driver's helmet. Go now, before what we bought is spent. He pictures a low wall, a barrel swinging, a white line of tracers searching. He loads in a rhythm that shows no hurry and all urgency. He, then AP, then he. Rains finds his body again and spends it. He kicks men into motion, flips the pry bar out before the tanks pull, sucks an end down, signals the platoon to drag their wounded, counts heads fast and dirty. He waves Miro to the cellar to tell the woman it's done for now, that doors will be returned or replaced by something square, that the hand that took will hammer tomorrow. He is lying the way soldiers lie to keep moving. He loops the field phone slack twice around a nail to keep it from whipping some neck open in the next wind. His hands shake. He decides it's the cold. The flare burns out and doesn't return at once. Maybe the observer is moving. Maybe he's dead. Maybe some voice back there is screaming orders. Dusk reasserts itself, honest and gray. The wind that's been steady all day pushes rain like grit. The far bank slides a little even after the Sherman is gone, brush mat half swallowed, which is fine. This crossing won't take a second go without work. Also fine. Rains will set a wedge under the far seat if he gets 5 minutes of grace from the AT crew's timetable. He tells the air, no more tanks until I look. The Sherman's engine climbs as it takes the lane. The blackout hood turns its light into a slit like a cat's eye. Tread marks stamp the spared doors with a ladder of V's that reads one message: keep going. DeLuca's crew does what they trained to do. One sets fuses without thinking. One squints past water through a sight. One feels steel through levers. The driver floats the nose around a right bend with a gentleness that would suit a sleeping child. He feels, underneath, the flecks of wood and the lie it agreed to tell for him. He doesn't yet know that he'll see doors in dreams. Miro reaches the cellar, arms full of hinges and panels that didn't make it or pieces that did. He tells Signora Bellini in quick, broken words that the tank is across, that others are coming, that they'll bring back what they can, that cigarettes can be nails if you don't look too close. She touches his face with onion dust fingers, says a word that is both thanks and go. He goes. He pockets a single screw because it is small and savable. A mortar lands near enough to knock Rains to a knee and slap mud into his mouth. He spits and tastes iron and linseed. He laughs once because tasting furniture while being shelled is absurd. He coughs the laugh away. His chest aches where he hit himself with the pry bar without noticing. He does the arithmetic again. One tank across before night keeps pressure, keeps the enemy from resetting on the ridge, keeps the window into dawn open. The wood agreed and then would refuse if asked again too soon. He sets his watch by someone else's flare. The infantry begin forward in the tank's wake, heads down, rifles tight. They use churned mud and brush as a path. Some slap a beam as they pass like you thump a lucky shoulder. The lane narrows into the hill and becomes a story someone else will carry tonight. Behind them, the bridge of doors and scrap rests like a lung used too hard. It won't carry joy. It carried duty for one pass. Rains knows that is what bridges are asked sometimes. He whistles once. The last man runs, reminding the dusk they are not ghosts. Up ahead, past the kink and the vineyard's end, a crossroads waits with a farmhouse and a low wall that suits a carriage or a gun the same. DeLuca fills his head with triangles and ranges and the simple rule: don't stop where a barrel can settle. He decides in an instant to do the risky thing, draw the gun, take its first look, let his infantry find its flank while it's busy. He taps the gunner's boot twice. Ready. Behind them, on the ditch, one door hangs from one hinge on the near side jam they robbed. Warped and mud-lacquered, once cream, now bone. It swings in the cold wind. Across its belly is stamped a ladder of chevrons, raised like a watermark, proof of weight that passed and did not crush. The hinge creaks in time with the Sherman's engine as it climbs and fades. The creak and the hum blend into the evening's memory. Drizzle slackens. In the small quiet before a new round start, Raines points 2 fingers down the lane and starts men moving.